3. And
Just say got it.
we are recording with
Okay, got
Mr.
it. Okay.
Mila back, who has an insatiable death wish from swimming with sharks, whales, and I get a text like 2 weeks ago, just beep, look at it, and it's just Paul with like a giant, looks like a Jurassic Park alligator, and it's just like are you I can't quite tell. You either have tungsten balls, or you're just you're very quickly trying to find out what the afterworld is like.
For the purists, it was a crocodile, not an alligator.
Oh, shut up. But that's what you're doing. And I respect it. It's impressive. It's terrifying. I get scared swimming in lakes, but so for everyone listening, the first episode we did was about swimming with sharks. The second one we did was about you swimming with the beasts of whales.
Whale.
Yeah. Third one, we kind of went off the rails and talked about all sorts of shit. But back to what is now becoming the theme of Paul is your insatiable death wish with creatures from the prehistoric era. What led to this, or do they all kind of lead to each other? Do you do the sharks? Do you do the whales? Do you do so does it all kind of lead into one another?
Probably a question for a psychologist or a psychoanalyst to answer, but all I can do for my untrained brain, all I can think about it is that basically it's kind of like a kind of a wish, not a death wish, but a wish that when I do go, I don't want to leave anything on the table and say, gee, I wish I had done this, that, and the other thing.
Correct.
And that all kind of started back when, I've always been interested in, kind of offbeat things growing up. And let's face it, we had, I think, a lot more, in some cases, imaginative things to look at, growing up, watching Mike Nelson on Sea Hunt, with the Lloyd Bridges, and then it was Jacques Cousteau and all those kind of things that kind of like what our appetites and stuff like that. But then you grow up and you get involved with life and things like that and supporting family and stuff like that. But you don't lose that spark. And then what kind of like really led me to really pursue this kind of stuff is that you do have a certain sense of mortality as you get older, not to dwell on that, but, I saw 9/11 happen in front of me. I was basically on the day of 9/11, I was still working for MasterCard, and we were meeting with our corporate client at that time with Citibank in a building, and I don't know if you know the geography of the New York City, Queens area, but in Queens, across the river, at that time, now it's built up tremendously over the last 20 years, but at that time, the only tall building on the other side of the East River there was that tall green building. It was a Citibank building. They had bought that building.
Yeah.
And it was the only skyscraper there. We were in that building, and somebody comes running in during a meeting. We had an interior conference room, and they said they hit the Trade Center. I said, what? And we go outside and we see this thing, burning from across the river, and you can see the flames. And like we kind of went back to our meeting and said, well, I guess they'll put it out, not realizing that if you could see flames that far away, they had to be huge flames. It didn't compute, But bottom line, okay, that happens. And in the next couple of days, all the papers are running these pictures. And if you remember the New York Post, specifically, other papers probably had it, but I remember the New York Post, they had some of these pictures of the people jumping out of the building. One of them became famous. It was called The Jumper. It was one guy that kind of focused on,
Yeah, falling man.
I'm looking at the falling man, exactly. And I'm looking at this picture, and I'm saying, this guy started his day like I did.
Yep.
Okay. And if you were like some kind of an angel or a spirit that popped into his kitchen the day he was having breakfast with his family and said, I predict in 3 hours you're going to jump out of the World Trade Center building to your death. Is there anything more bizarre that you could even think of than that happening? It happened. So it kind of like said to me, you know what? Life is too serendipitous, too, unpredictable to say, well, when I get to that age, I'll do this. So when I get to, I'll do, no. I said, you know what? As soon as I have the ability, which I was close to the point of, the kids are almost off the payroll. The pass is almost paid off, things like that. I could do this. My wife was working. She had benefits and stuff like that. I can do this stuff, things I wanted to pursue. So I just started to pursue them, whether it was the sharks, the whales. I didn't plan on crocodiles, but, just doing this kind of stuff. That's what kind of lit, the fuse on me to get going.
Well, I think that's actually, hold on, let me guess it. We've talked about that before, but I do think it's brilliant, and I do identify with that because we have these plans. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'll settle down here. And I think around this time, maybe I'd like to do this and start doing that. And it's sure sounds great, but it never plays out that way. And I remember always thinking when I was pre-med, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And then as I kind of went through the steps further, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And I think I'll probably retire early. I was like, I won't practice into old age, but I want to be an anesthesiologist. I was like, I'll just save money.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day, it was my senior year. And I remember we went to the bars, and afterwards, I remember I was back in my bed. We'd smoked a ton of pot, and I was like too high to fall asleep. And I was just thinking, and I remember thinking, like, what if not if someone said you're going to die tomorrow, but not if someone said you're going to die in 20 years? I remember thinking, we'll just hypothetically, we'll just say it was August 1st. I remember thinking, I was like, what if I somehow knew with no, what if a doctor told me you're going to die exactly 1 decade from today? 3,650 days from today. It's long enough that you can't just go out and start partying now, right? I was like, you'd still have to have some income source. It's not like you're going to die in a week. I'm like, okay, I couldn't burn it all out now, and I couldn't rely on friends and family to support me because that's kind of bullshit for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also short enough that you might not look at a 20 or 30-year horizon and go, when I reach this age, I'll move here, and then I'd like to. And I really started playing with this idea in my head. And it's a unique disease. You don't actually look sick, you don't actually feel sick, but you have so it's this weird middle ground where you'd still have to get a job, but you're not gonna try to climb the corporate ladder, because in the back of your mind you're like, I've got this many years. So it'd be this really weird hybrid of like, you'd be still living your best life but also still living in reality. It couldn't just be Groundhog Day where every morning you wake up, do some coke, and go drive. No, it's like there's this middle ground. But at the same time, you're not going to be working 80 hours a week and putting money in a Roth IRA, because you know that you're not going to see any of that. And I kept thinking and thinking. I was like, well, there's no way a doctor could know that, right? But then I started thinking, like, what evidence do I have that 10 years from today I don't get hit by a fucking bus? What difference does it make? How would my life be different in that time? And I started thinking, I was like, well, I have no guarantee. What about an aneurysm? What about a terrorist attack? What about whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And it really started to rip my mind apart, that I was like, and so I'd be studying and I'd be like, what if I just die partway along? And I had all these dreams, and then, it's simultaneously the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. But a couple months later, after I graduated, we've talked about this, I lost my older brother to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I was and I always, it's terrible. It's
How
suicide.
old was he?
He was 27. I was 23. But I always think, like, what if that wasn't suicide? Like, what if it was just a bus crash? What if it was just a car crash? What if it was just, how would it be any different? And how many things did he do that, he had been putting away? And it kind of stuck in my head, this whole 10-year scenario, because what if you get to the 10-year mark? There are all these variables about this. And what if you get to the 10-year mark and then it turns out you don't die? Well, it's like, well, thank God you kept a job, so you still have some savings, and you can kind of, but then, you'd be living this life and you're like, well, I still don't know if it's going to end any day. So you'd still be living this Venn diagram life of like, I can't party all the time, but I have no idea. And then the thought kept going, what if this went all the way until you were 80 and it was never a reality? You would be so thankful that you lived under the sword of Damocles, thinking that it was always just around the corner, just enough that you still had to have a job, pay your bills, don't rely on other people, don't be a burden. But you were also really sure that you were always about to die. You're like, I don't get it. I'm past the 10-year mark. I'm supposed to die any day now. And I finally concluded that I was like, wow, you kind of just got to walk that middle line. You got to live in reality, still got to pay your bills, you still got to have savings, because what if you do end up living to 80?
Yeah.
But also, well, I think what you're saying is you could also be falling man tomorrow. And that's kind of that is what led to me deciding not to go to medical school, and over the course of 7 years, in the last 2 years, building up this podcast. But I think that's why you and I connect well on this, is we both kind of had that moment where we're like, dude, this might be over tomorrow. And so granted, I sit in a leather chair and talking to a camera, and you swim with dinosaurs, but same idea.
Yeah, it's kind of like a big aha moment that you have,
Yes. And it's pure liberation, and it's terrifying, but it's also, you can never unsee it. You can never go quite back into the rat race the same way. Because, I mean, no, I think about that. What was that guy possibly just seriously eating cereal, thinking in 3 hours I'm gonna jump out of the World Trade Center? That's that's like saying, Tommy, you're killed tomorrow because a defunct Russian satellite deorbits and hits your
Yeah.
apartment.
Uh-huh. I mean, yeah, that guy was that was my thought. That this guy was probably having breakfast that morning, planning what he's going to have for dinner, and thinking about what he's going to do that weekend.
Yeah, what's
Stuff
Friday
like
coming?
this.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, who ever, hitting a bus, getting hit by a bus almost sounds more logical than that. I mean, that is like
A
that's
lot more
from
logical.
anybody's mind.
Yeah.
So that said to me, like, you know what, you can't plan on anything really. You have to kind of like
Nothing.
fill your life with as many experiences and good things as you can, and hope for a long run.
Yeah. And it's no, exactly. I mean, and maybe he's watching National Geographic the night before and thinking, maybe, 20 years and the kids are out of the house. Honey, I think I might like to go swim with sharks. And but I mean, but seriously, it's like, and that's a scenario we all know. We recognize the famous picture. What about an aneurysm? You
Mm-hmm.
just drop fucking dead. You just, 30, you find out you have cancer. Like
Yep.
it's there. And it's such an odd equation though, because you can't just go all in and go, you're right, it's over. Spend all the money, we're going to Vegas. Well, no, because what if you end up living, right? So it's so after we had just had that philosophical rabbit hole, let's go into the alligator. You said for the purist, crocodiles or alligators?
It's a crocodile. Yeah.
Crocodile, not an alligator. So what kind of led to this, and how did this experience differ? And off the top of my head, I would imagine it's not as terrifying as sharks because at least you're not in their arena, being the ocean.
Well, luckily, when I encountered this thing, it was somebody had already taken the time to kind of secure its feet with rope or whatever together, and duct tape its jaws. So the joke is I'm really chicken of the sea. I don't have any chances. So what happened? We get this email from our administrator in our condo down there in Cozumel saying, we've seen a crocodile coming out of the mangroves. Be careful, don't walk it if you're walking at night. Be careful, don't have your kids be around unsupervised because there's this crocodile around. We all think what happened down at Disney World a couple of years ago where somebody's child got taken. Remember that?
Oh,
that was in the
yeah.
news. So anyway, I'm saying this has got to be a croc or you know what? I can't believe this. So I said I got to walk around and see if I can find this thing. I want to see if I can see it because we have these mangroves between our condos there. There are little paths, wood paths you can kind of walk through and stuff and walk around. I said I'm gonna be very careful, but I want to see this thing. And I got outside and I saw this crowd of people, some of our workers who work on the staff there, kind of together. I walked over and sure enough, they had already found it. One of the guys actually wrestled it out of the mangrove. It's like this thing is 8 or 9 feet long. Yeah, his shirt was all torn and dirty and stuff like this. And they had tied his legs up with some kind of cord and put some blue duct tape around its jaws so it couldn't open up. And it's just sitting there looking at us breathing very slowly and stuff like this. So I'm talking about, well, this is amazing. How this happened with, what's happened, the big picture is that because of the pandemic, a lot of places just were very quiet, which allowed the local wildlife to kind of multiply, I guess, have a chance to regenerate and also explore vacant areas. I mean, Long Island, we had geese running into Roosevelt Field because Roosevelt Field the parking area was closed. So, animals will seem to repopulate the areas they've been kicked out of, I guess. So same with crocodiles. So evidently the crocodiles have been multiplying and beginning to venture out, and also in some cases there's been some building going on which may have displaced some habitat, who knows why. Anyway, so we have some crocodiles now. So bottom line, I get down to see this thing and I'm watching it, and it's funny, the people never had an idea. Let me take some pictures of you guys. I said, oh yeah, great idea. They had no idea. So I'm taking pictures of them, and they took some pictures of me, which is what I sent to you. And I said, I can't resist touching this thing because you can see it breathing. Its ribs are going in and out and stuff like this very slowly. Its eyes are looking around like, get me out of here and stuff like this, And I was shocked. I guess I shouldn't be because people have said like crocodile or alligator boots are very soft and pliable leather. I touched this thing on the side, and the skin was extremely soft. I thought it'd be like rough. Obviously, the top part with those little jagged things is tough, like armor.
Yeah.
But the side as I kind of brushed it with my hand, was very soft and just it felt like high grade leather, which I guess is what people turn them into if they whatever. But it was an amazing thing just to kind of be close to this thing and touch it while it was still breathing. The good news for the crocodile, it was relocated to a natural park further south. So the crocodile lived. It had a happy ending for the crocodile, and we all had a big charge out of our experience. So that that was kind of a low key adventure, but it was something that was totally unplanned.
We've talked about this before with like the sharks. Like, is there something primitive about seeing that thing up close? And it's like this weird living time capsule from
Mhm.
300 million years ago. And it's like, sure, we have in-flight Wi-Fi and Uber
Mhm.
Eats, and it's like, but here are these armored, scaly, like the pandemic. It's like the pandemic. It's
Mhm.
do you remember that show? Like it's like When We're Gone or something. There was a show on Discovery Channel or whatever, History Channel years ago. It was I don't even remember what the premise. Well, the premise is that all humans disappear just like that. There's no nuclear war. There's no pandemic. We're all just boop gone. And like what would happen? And you have like the fails. Like immediately you start to see like weeds growing, and then it's like,
Mhm.
and then things like nuclear power plants. They have like fail safes and they shut down, and like,
Well, they
power line.
explode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
over the centuries, like the glass on skyscrapers really is starts to get abrasive, and like the ones in
Mhm.
Dubai break down before the ones in New York, and all this stuff. But one of the things is like vegetation, but then animals sort of very quickly like refill, like within like two
They
years,
do.
like Manhattan is like completely full of deer and stuff. There is something odd about, it's like the kind of what we are talking about, like the sword of Damocles, like, being the falling man. There's something about society could be the falling man. Just like that,
Mhm.
this little like novelty of, you texting me a picture. Hey, Tom, look at this alligator. Just like that thing could be the biggest problem in all. Let's just say it's like me and Paul and a couple other guys, and we're like the lone survivors. That goes from like this, hey, neat, put it on Instagram, to like, dude, there is a monster outside. There is a literal monster outside. Yeah.
Well,
Is
what's
there?
interesting about that, what you're touching on, as far as being primitive and things like that, we've kind of evolved over the past, few millennia that humans have been around. Okay, to some extent physically, but more, I think, socially, intellectually, and that kind of way. Whereas the animals that we encounter really haven't. I mean, they may have
Yeah,
evolved physically, but pretty much
they're the same.
the great white that I saw back in 2019 probably had the same thought process, okay, as his great grandfather shark, several thousand years ago. There is, when you see one of these things in person without glass between you and it, like an aquarium or something like that, whether it's a shark or whales and stuff like this, you're seeing something that has, if it comes at you, kind of like looking like it would have looked at you if you were around way back when. It
Yeah.
hasn't evolved. It's got that same look about it. It's that same um, uh, dominance, if you will, where it's going to basically, it's in charge, not you.
Yeah.
And it just comes at you, and you feel kind of small in its presence. You know,
It's
it,
like,
it, yeah, I'm sorry again.
no, no, no. It's like kind of like there's sort of these like primal things, right? When you see a full moon and you're just kind of staring at it and you hear like the bugs at night, there's something that's like, it doesn't matter whether we're on the iPhone 5 or the iPhone 12. It's like there's something so much deeper, right? Or it's like you see the Great Pyramids. The Great Pyramids always evoke something odd in me, because like Napoleon looked at it. Like if Jesus Christ went over there, he saw it. Buddha would. They all saw the same thing. There's something about a full moon where, sitting around a fire, like a crackling fire outside, there's something so deep and primitive. It's almost like when you hear a song from like in time of your life and it
Mhm.
brings you back to that moment. It's like that's what like a fire is, or a full moon is, but it's like for us as an entire species, it's like it just pulls you all the way back in time to just this empires rise and fall, but it's just this whole wake up, you eat, you have sex, you reproduce, you grow old, you die. And whether you're like an ancient Sumerian or modern day Canadian, there are the crackling fire, the moon at night, the rising sun, the rainstorm, just these. And that's something that is just as old, where like the moon and the fire, they didn't change. So when you see an alligator or a great white, there's something very, you can only imagine, is as built into us, some
You know what
epigenetic
it
thing.
is? It's when it looks at you.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you talk about this because we all have these certain primal things in us, fears that we think we've buried, but they're really deep in there, and it surfaces in the oddest ways. And here's one thing I kind of read this a long time ago. It kind of stuck with me because I used to do a lot of presentations and stuff like that. And they said, did you ever wonder why some people, or many of us, are so fearful when we're about to give a presentation? In front of maybe it could be 50 people or 100 people. You're in an auditorium, and why do you get so nervous? Well, obviously there's the social part of that where you don't want to flub and make a fool of yourself, whatever, but they said it goes deeper than that, because you have, let's say, 300 people looking at you, and what it's setting off inside you is a primal fear that's so deep that you don't realize it, of not that number of eyes looking at you. And they said, the article went on to say that because when something looked at you way back when, in primal days, or even in current days sometimes, in the animal world, if it's looking at you, it's looking at you for one reason: it wants to eat you.
Yeah.
So they said the fear that people have, whether they realize it or not, because they don't realize it because it's so deep, when you're beginning to break out in the sweat, if you're in an auditorium with 300 people waiting to start speaking, it's because you're deep in your psyche, there's a fear of being eaten.
Yeah.
It sounds bizarre, but that's what it really is.
Yeah.
And as an underwater photographer, I came upon this also because many times when you raise that lens and you're ready to take that picture, all of a sudden, even if you're trying to be very stealthy and very slow, the minute that lens goes up, the fish or whatever you're taking off many times will bolt. Just you're ready to take that, and you say, why did it do that? What it is that to a fish or anything else, the lens of a camera looks like the giant eye of something.
Yeah.
And if the eye is that big, what's behind the eye is probably even bigger.
Yeah.
So fish know that if I'm being looked at by another fish, it probably wants to eat me. So when they see a photographer raise a lens that looks like this, looks like an eye to a fish, they're out of there, So it's kind of like, again, these primal fears manifest themselves in ways that we wouldn't even think of, in very bizarre ways. So that always left me with kind of, now I still do presentations, but I it relaxes me. I say, okay, I have to get over my fear of being eaten. I'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. Anytime that many, I mean, that's also not like a natural thing, even within like the Homo sapien history, probably until somewhat recently. It's not at all a natural thing if every human was looking at you. If you were in a village, like, you probably did something wrong. If you're in a spot, like, are you about to be hung? Are you about to be ostracized? Are you about to be, kicked out of the village? Are you about to be stoned? Like,
Yep.
what is going on? If everyone's did you just stumble upon like an imposing like army battalion, and you're like, and they all look up at you, and you're like, and it's just, that's the last thing you see.
Are you naked and you didn't realize it?
Yes, but I mean, there's something like that, right? Where it is very unnatural. For even this podcast, like, it's only just me talking to some other person. It doesn't really register if I look at a video and it has 50 views. That would terrify me, let alone 1,000. So, and it's also, I think we've talked about it before, but it's like that study they did back in like the 70s or 80s, and it's like mice being scared of like hawks or something. And there is an epigenetic imprinting where you can take mice from the wild that like fear hawks. They fear the silhouette of a hawk overhead. You can take those mice indoors, and breed them. They have kids, and then the kids have kids, and then the kids have kids have kids have kids. You can get like 8, 9, 10 generations over the course of like a year, to the point where none of the mice alive, none of even their grandparents lived in any other place than this like artificial, whatever, like, just, almost zoo type area, like indoor, completely climate controlled. And then if they find, if they on like a zip line overhead, if they did like a circle They didn't even really notice it, whatever. And then if they would have maybe took a silhouette of another mouse and dragged it across the quote unquote sky,
Mhm.
is whatever. And then they do the silhouette of the hawk and they all go a primal fear, bury under the ground, just zip gone. And it's something that's none of them have ever even been outside of, and
Right.
they can't read. They're not watching old documentaries about their mice, and they live in this little tiny box.
Mhm.
You got to think that there's why wouldn't that also be taking place in our minds with
Yes, I think it's called,
sharks?
yeah, the genetic imprint or a genetic memory
Yeah,
that is in our genes somehow. That I may have the same fear or something, even though my parents or myself never experienced it. But way back generations ago, for some reason, it gets into your gene. It's imprinted in your gene somehow. I don't know how it happens, but that's I've read about. Yes, exactly. Hmm.
yeah. So you got to imagine that there's something, and then so even farther back would be like, you know, our our monkey ancestors or our gorilla ancestors, and then farther back from that before them was like a weird type of shrew thing right after the dinosaurs went extinct. Like, so at our like most core area, there's got to be something that, like, seeing a shark like look at you, like just kind of those dead black eyes,
Hmm.
there's got to be something deep inside of us that's like, no way.
You do feel it. I can tell you right now when a shark looks at you, um, it you get a certain feeling in you that obviously if you have some experience, you're kind of trained to override that where you don't
Mm-hmm.
panic. Now, obviously, if I wasn't trained or whatever, hadn't had experience, I'd be out of there in a second. I'd be bolting in fear. But I'm kind of like trained to override that feeling. But that feeling is still there. When it's interesting, when a shark looks at you, okay, it's like an oh my god moment. Okay, uh, when a whale looks at you, it's different.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if it's because a mammal has a different look in its eye, certain intelligence. When a shark looks at you, there's only it's going through an assessment. Either you are food, a threat, or just part of the background. That's about it. When a whale looks at you, obviously it's thinking, well, it knows you're not food. It's smart enough to know you're not food. It wonders probably if you're a threat, maybe, whatever. But they look, how puny you are, no. But there's a different. You can feel a different intelligence. So maybe it's because they're mammals and they have a different brain and stuff like that. We can relate to them better. I don't know what it is. But to your point, yes, when something looks at you like that, you feel that chill.
Yeah. Can you can you explain, because kind of that overriding thing, I have on the special forces guys on here a lot, and they talk about learning to override your fight or flight. You can't lose
Hmm.
your shit every time a bullet flies by. They gotta, they keep their calm, their composure. You always
Yeah.
hear reports about that of Delta Force guys in firefights. All the young Marines are going crazy, and the Delta Force guys are just kind of sitting there, just, it's another day at the office. But they also
Yeah.
talk about, I've had, Joe Tedai on here, and he was in the most elite special forces you can get, CIA Special Activities Division, James Bond shit. And he talks about, like, in a firefight, like, they're trained, when they start to get tunnel vision, you don't freak out. Oh my God, it's tunnel vision. No, it's like, they always say, like, yeah, put one kneecap on the ground and like shake your head. And it's just, they've just learned it. It's no different than, the social settings of, you feel like a fart or a burp coming on, but you're at dinner with like your new girlfriend's parents, you're just like, just put it back down. Now it's not me and my buddies hanging out drinking beers and you fart and everyone's like, oh fuck you. You're like, now's not the time. I'm at a very nice restaurant. Her father's a doctor. Keep it inside.
Yeah.
And they kind of talk about training the fight or flight. They know to just not freak out when bullets fly by. And also when you do start to get the tunnel vision, you just learn to get it away. Whereas if that happened to me, I would absolutely lose my mind. So aside from the training, can you kind of talk about what is it, can you even put it into words, but what is it when the shark looks at you? Like, what can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, it also depends on what kind of shark we're talking about.
Biggest,
And
baddest motherfucker.
because there are nurse sharks. There are certain sharks prefer sushi to prime rib.
And
Prime rib.
no. I want
So
the
we're talking about a
beast.
great white.
The
Yeah.
beast.
When this thing looks at you, um, just to take a step back before you even go into one of these experiences, the scuba operator or tour operator or whatever will ask you, have you seen sharks before? Have you been with sharks before? If you say no, they might say maybe this is not the thing for you, or they might, give you a quick tutorial on what to do. But let's say even when you're trained, you say, yeah, I've seen sharks before. I've been with them. Okay, fine. Okay, good. Okay. So that takes out some of the thing when you first see that shadow coming towards you, you're not going to freak out and bolt to the surface. Okay. But that being said, now you get past that point, and now here it comes. Okay, it's getting closer and closer. You're wondering what its intentions are. You don't really know what's going on. It's an own little brain. You might be used to having sharks around you, but what if the shark is having a bad day? Animals have bad days, where they might be cranky than other days.
Yeah.
If it's having a bad day and maybe it's either hungry, but then it hadn't eaten for a while, maybe it's got a pain in its side and it's just kind of feeling ornery. It's going to snap at the first thing it sees, which could be me. So you feel that look at you, and the first thing you kind of assess is, okay, are there any more things around me? Is it me, or is this the two of us together here, or whatever? And you kind of like assess, okay, if I need to move out of the way quickly, do I have an exit plan here? So you do think of those things, but you're kind of trained to maybe be not falsely secure, but you're kind of, know that all things being equal, you're probably not on the menu because you're different from what it normally eats. And you kind of feel a certain degree of security. It could be a false degree of security. You almost think you could get away if you wanted to, which is the biggest mistake you can make, having been with barracudas one time in a situation where all of a sudden, you see barracudas all the time. They're curious. They kind of go past you, whatever. And you think, well, if this barracuda was kind of like wondering, I could probably get away. I was in the middle of a situation one time where these barracudas, there was a fish that was being kind of like eaten by its natives, right? It's the local population there. It was kind of half eaten, but still alive. And a couple of barracudas, and all of a sudden the fish scattered because they saw what we didn't see. Two barracudas are coming in from the blue, barreling at a high speed. And when these barracudas hit this fish, you realize, oh, that's how fast a barracuda can go. Okay. If it wanted to do something, there's no way I'm getting away.
Yeah.
So you do get from your training a certain degree of, maybe it's a misplaced security or false sense of security. But, to your point, you just kind of like have to, you kind of take a deep breath, you kind of gulp, you kind of feel your inside kind of tighten a little bit, but you don't panic. You just kind of say, okay, all things being equal, things should turn out okay.
Yeah.
That's not all you can do, because unless there's a physical barrier, like if you're in a cage, that's a very, heavy duty steel cage, that provides a sense of security. You feel, okay, I don't care how big the shark is, it's probably not going to be able to break the cage open like it did in Jaws, you hope, but if there's no barrier, you do feel more exposed, more open. And the only thing you can do is kind of like just work through it, logically. You have to like have your fear and your logic kind of override your fear, because it's the sense of fear you have is almost primal. You can't stop yourself from feeling a certain amount of fear, whether it's a stomach tighten, whether you feel sweat breaking out in your arms. It's going to happen. The thing is, can you override that with a certain degree of logic and experience, even if the logic might be a little misplaced? Maybe you really can't get away if you wanted to, but you have no choice but to kind of like assume things are going to go okay. Follow your training, and just don't do something stupid like try and reach out and pet the thing or touch it or aggravate it.
Yeah, even the Delta Force guys say that, like, you don't want to be fearless. So you're fearless, you're a liability. You're an idiot. You want to understand fear, but be able to. Hunter S. Thompson said it. He said fear is like a wild animal. He's like, keep it in front of you. You can even put a leash on it and you can have it pull your cart around for you, but always have a shotgun pointed at it. Understand how to put it down.
I mean, like, I've been able to be kind of in control of the situation, or at least in control of myself. However, if suddenly this thing really exhibited some kind of aggressive intention or something like this, and I had nothing to defend myself with other than maybe hit it with my camera or something like that, I don't know how I'd react. I mean, I'd probably have an accident in my wetsuit.
Yeah, I would. I'd shit my pants. Of course I would. 100% I would. Yeah, I was thinking, like, just kind of thinking like, what would be the next thing you go for? Man, I think you got to go mess around with some like Kodiak bears. I think that's the next step. I think you've already tackled the scariest. You've tackled sharks, which are hands down, they're the scariest. They're the most lethal, and they live in an environment that is alien to even the most well-adapted scuba diver. It's still an ocean. You did not evolve there. I think you've done the scariest. I think you've already skydived from space. I think you just go a little lower. I think you got polar bears or some Kodiaks or big old grizzlies.
Well, you just touched on something interesting as far as skydiving from space or in the water or whatever. I have a very strong sense of heights, a fear of heights.
So do I. Terrified.
Get me on top of a building and I'm all of a sudden,
I can't. Yeah, I can't breathe.
Get off a roof onto a ladder, going back. I get onto the roof, but coming off backwards.
When I stand on a stool to hang up the sound panels 6 feet above me,
okay.
I'm like, oh man, I'm up there now. I'm 3 feet up, and I'm.
But here's the thing now: when you're diving, you're weightless pretty much, as long as you're properly weighted, and the whole intent is to be what they call neutrally buoyant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go up a little bit, you might take a deep breath, and that makes you more buoyant. You go up a little bit. You exhale, you'll go down a little bit. So you're basically neutrally buoyant, right? And say you're doing a wall dive, okay? So this wall, typically in many walls, you have 60 feet of depth might be the ledge, and then the wall begins to go down. And in places like Cozumel, this wall goes down to over 1,000 feet. So now you're against the wall and you're looking at the corals and the turtles and the angelfish and stuff like that, And then so the wall is like this right now. If you're here, as you begin to move out off the wall, okay, you're now, all of a sudden you see below you, what's under you now is not a couple of feet. Now it's like 20 feet below you. The further you go off the wall, because the wall's sloping, right?
Yeah.
Look, the other wall's 30 feet, 50 feet. Before you know it, you lose sight of the wall, depending on the water you're in. In Cozumel, you have 100-foot visibility. New York, maybe you have 10 feet of visibility. But let's say we're in the Caribbean, okay, nice clear water, and you have 100-foot visibility. So you're looking down, and now you're off the wall, and now you can't see the wall anymore. And the wall is now gone. You're out in the deep blue. What's below you goes to 1,000 feet almost. Okay.
Okay.
Like I said, I have a fear of heights. Okay. Even if I could see down there, maybe I could see for a couple hundred feet, not even probably 100 feet at max. But now you go up there. So intellectually, it's deeper down there, and they tell you it goes down to 1,000 feet, whatever. So now you're out there, and you're kind of like just kind of floating. But I have no fear. I don't know why. I should be afraid that I'm suspended over 1,000 feet of depth below me.
Yeah.
Okay. But for some reason, I feel very, very comfortable doing that. I'm never going to skydive out of a plane. I don't think I could handle that. Just looking at it, jumping out of a good plane. No. So I don't know what controls that. All that stuff. I don't know why I'm afraid of being a ladder 20 feet off the ground, but I'll let myself drift off a wall. So like I have maybe 1,000 feet of drop space below me, and maybe I know I can't really. So I could sink if I did a few things, but you're just floating there. So I lose that sense of fear. I have no idea why.
Well, it's probably that real sense of security, like what you're talking about. Is if you're in the metal cage, you actually do feel secure. If you're in the aquarium and you see the beast, you're like, I know I'm good. There's probably something where we think like humans, we do have like a functioning brain, and you can go, yeah, I know that's a depth, but it's also you can't fall. It's actually very difficult to get down that far. So
here's another thing that along the same lines. Let's say you're along a wall, and you're down to like they don't want you to go below 80 feet, 90 feet, maybe that's a dive plan. But it's very easy to kind of like as you're watching things to lose track of where you are. Okay, especially on a wall because there's no bottom, right? You just kind of go along the wall. You can go along the wall, so you're only about a foot off the wall, but the wall's sloping. So now all of a sudden you look at your depth gauge. Oh, I'm 120 feet down. I should go up a little higher. But you can get what's called a what is this happening here? You can get a downwelling, which is the current along. There's always some current around, but for whatever reason, maybe it's because it gets a little colder and it sinks, whatever. The water is spilling down along the wall like an undersea waterfall, and you're trying to go up, and it's kind of pushing you down. Okay. Now all of a sudden, you're at 100 feet, and you want to get 90, 80, 70, but you see it's going 105, 110, and you're working against that, okay? And you can't, it's difficult to overcome that. Now I'm getting worried. Now I'm getting scared. Now you're trained to do certain things. Since that particular thing has never happened to me, I don't know if I remember my training. You want to first inflate your BC with air, pushes you up. That doesn't work. Take out your weights, dump your weights, and eventually, hopefully, you can counteract that downward force and get yourself up. So it's like, well, I have no fear of falling. If I can't get back up, all of a sudden I'm having a pre-panic moment.
Yeah. My friend David O'Neill's scuba diver. He's kind of hardcore. I'm like, what do you? I think he does like underwater, like spelunking, like going into caves and shit.
Oh yeah.
Fuck that.
No.
But I was like, what's your training? And he just keeps a 357 with him. I'm not even kidding. He
Underwater?
goes, oh yeah. He goes, I'll just fucking shoot myself.
Okay.
I was like, that's hardcore. I'm good. I stay on the land. But there is something weird, like back to like fear of heights.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get scared flying. I did for a little while, but it went away. I don't get scared of flying. It's a very odd thing. Skyscraper, go up. I love skyscrapers. I think they're the coolest things ever. I never want to be in them. Go up even like, 10, spring break, going to Panama City, even just being 15 floors up, stepping out on the back porch. There's something where I'm like, I can feel it right now as I'm saying it. I can feel my hamstrings tighten. I keep 1 foot like behind the sliding door. There's just, I don't even want to like go over, but get in a plane and you go to 40,000 feet. Now, at one point you could argue, well, at that height, it's abstract. You're not looking down. Okay, well, even at lower, even when it's just taking off, I still don't feel it. Even when I'm looking down 2,000 feet, see little cars, there's something that I just don't feel. It's just rationally not. I just don't. And I know I'm not. I know you're probably safer in a skyscraper than a plane because it's not a moving thing. But I don't feel that. But standing on the 20th floor, looking out of a window, I feel that. I feel like your stomach. I was watching a clip last night of like Crocodile Dundee. There's some scene where there's like a jumper or something from one of the skyscrapers, and I don't know what it is, from like the 80s. I've never seen it. But even watching that clip last night on my little 6-inch iPhone, sitting in a leather chair, and then the camera pans over the edge, and it was like 10 floors. Even that, I was like, I just kind of felt, they go up and down my spine, and like my arms kind of got a little weak. But throw me in a plane 5 miles up, I don't know.
I guess it helps to have this, you have this thing around you, like you're secure. I don't know.
Kind of a cocoon.
I know that Aloha Airlines flight a few years ago, when top of the fuselage pulled off,
ripped off 747.
And some of the people, they lost a few people, but the rest of the people were still, they were strapped in. And they made it. They got down in time. I can't imagine what that was like. But here's the thought about what we were talking about earlier. Also, it encompasses some of that, plus the serendipitous of life. In the news this past week, one of the astronauts that went up with William Shatner.
Oh yeah, died in that small plane crash.
Died in a small plane crash in New Jersey just the last week.
Yeah.
So now, if I said, what do you think is more dangerous, taking a rocket into outer space or getting into a small plane, whatever? Now, I know small planes have a higher crash record than commercial airliners. That's a statistic. We all know that. But still, okay, plan one, get into a spaceship that's, semi-tried, semi-proven, go up space, come down, splash down, get out, or hop in a little plane in New Jersey and go for a few miles and land. Which is more dangerous? And this poor guy dies in the New Jersey plane crash of a little plane after he's been in space a week earlier with William Shatner. I mean, what is that all about? So is that,
And then you can extrapolate that one more step and be like, I could look at it and go, yeah, man, how did he died in the plane crash and not go into space? But the reality is when I get in my car and go to Walmart, I'm at an even higher risk of dying. And it's just rationally not there. And we get in the car every day, and I don't know. It is kind of hard. Maybe we're just playing on those deep fears we're feeling is that epigenetic imprinting, right? Because heights, that's there. Maybe flying in a plane, it's because it's so new. It's not imprinted on us. It's in the last 120 years.
That could be.
Yeah. Versus like the ledge looking down, that's there. That's the ape looking over the cliff. That's the, pre-hominid shrew looking off the tree branch. Like that is maybe that's what it is it's much deeper in us. And then you underwater looking off the edge, that's not that might not be imprinted as deeply. Out of all the humans, out of all of our ancestors, I'm sure a large number, but relatively probably a minor percentage have been in the Caribbean looking down off of a ledge, right? I mean, look at me. I'm a white Irish guy. My ancestors were not skin diving in French Polynesia. We're, dying from potatoes and vodka.
Right.
But it's like versus heights, that's something that whether you're an Eskimo or whether you're in Egypt, it's still kind of all there, right? So there are these kind of much, I don't know, much deeper, getting eaten by an animal, a height, those are kind of things that's probably more universal.
Yeah.
Not that I know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Fuck if I know.
What do we all know? But yeah, I mean, it's you can't figure some of this stuff out. I get a little shaky watching pictures. They every so often see these old black and white pictures when they're building the Empire State Building.
Oh my God, yeah.
Walking on those girders.
Yeah.
And I think wasn't there a tribe of Indians that they wanted to hire, especially because they had no fear of heights?
Yeah.
I mean, how does a specific tribe of human beings have no fear of heights? What is that all about? Is that because of their training? I don't know. It's like,
that is a good point.
I don't know.
That is a good point.
But when I see those things, I think, oh my God, it's where does that come from? And I feel I can't. I have to turn the page. I can't keep looking at those pictures.
Yeah, no, and well, a huge thing is also like the riveters. They're like 3-man teams that have a guy that would use like a torch. He'd heat it up. The second, or I think it was 4-man team. Second guy picked it up with tongs and would throw it. The third guy had this like metal catcher's mitt. He would catch it. Fourth guy would pick it up and rivet it in.
Mm-hmm.
They were also paid per rivet, and so it's you got to think it's Great Depression era. Man, you're getting a penny per rivet. Maybe they just don't give a shit. They're just like, screw it, just do the work. I don't know. But I know with like on the Burj Khalifa, that 828-meter building in Dubai, there's a cool video on I think it was CNN years ago about the window washers. And their logic was, I mean, guy just looks straight at he just, deadpan answer. He goes, above 10 floors, your death rate's 99.9%. He goes, once you're above, he goes, I'm more scared at 8 or 9 floors because it's like, well, I could actually survive. But once you get to, he's like, the difference between floor 80 and floor 180, the only difference is I'm getting paid more. He goes, it's just as you're equally dead. So I don't know. Maybe the logical mind can overcome it. I don't know. Maybe it's within that lifetime. You could train.
How about these guys? I was watching something on TV recently where they were talking about these the fellows who the free climbers who climb these caves, climb mountains. Some have ropes, they have rope, but some of them don't do it without ropes.
Alex Honnold.
And there was a guy climbing El Capitan.
I think it's Honnold. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm watching this guy go from point to point, and then the foot goes up, and then they have a web, but it's like I can't imagine doing that, knowing that one false step, you miss a step, you're gone. I mean, I can't process that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You got to almost imagine, some people some people work very, very hard at their talent. And then there are some people that, although they work hard, they're also just, even as a kindergartner, you're like, she has a beautiful voice. Like she's going to be singing, or it's like that guy practices really hard, but he's also 6'8" and he's like super like agile. Like he's going to be in the NBA. Maybe there's just something, in a large enough population, maybe there's just a percentage of people that like, some people are colorblind. Some people are double jointed. Maybe some people that part of the brain's just turned off and they see a height and they're like, I hope I don't mess up, but You're
talking about parts of the brain. That's interesting because I was watching, I think it might've been on 60 Minutes last week about people who were heroes. There's a fund, there's some kind of a fund, a heroes fund. It was started by, I forget who started it, where this group of people, in honor of somebody, they put this, the Andrew Carnegie Fund. For some reason, Andrew Carnegie started this fund where they would give a certain amount of money over the course of a year to 10 or 15 people who were heroes, defined as putting themselves in danger to save someone else's life. And they interviewed some of these people who did these kinds of things, like, stopped a robbery by, throwing themselves in front of the guy with the gun or whatever they were doing. And towards the end of the show, they said, we contacted some neuroscientists to find out what makes some people heroes. And what they found, there was a difference in their brain, that certain part of their brain was overdeveloped as far as creating empathy for the plight of other people.
Okay.
And the other part of the brain, which conditioned themselves to say, don't do this because it's not a good idea, that part was underdeveloped. So they said, because when they interviewed the people, they said, I didn't give it a thought. I just reacted. So they said, well, okay, what's the common thread here? And the common thread, when they had these neuroscientists do brain mapping, certain parts of the people's brains were overdeveloped as far as caring for other people, and underdeveloped as far as the fear of danger that they had for their own life. And maybe it's something along those, physical imprints in people's brains that affect how we react. I don't know, but that was an interesting show that they had on 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
John Bastone was a Marine on, I think, Iwo Jima or Okinawa. And I think, and not to, I say this lightly or relatively, apparently he was just another Marine. This wasn't some highly trained Jason Bourne. But they said it was more common than you think, that out of every X number of Marines, every 100 or every 1,000, you would get these guys who there was no signs of it. There's no way you could predict it. But when shit hit the fan, some guys just stepped up to the plate. And apparently John, not reckless, again, not being fearless, like very aware that he could die. But I think it was Okinawa or Iwo Jima. We'll just call it Iwo Jima. Apparently he was, running up and down the lines. He was replenishing everyone's ammo. He was covering fire. He was sweeping caves. And it wasn't a death wish. I mean, he was married. I think he had 2 young kids. And after several days, he was gunned down and killed. But everyone remembers Bastone because he was just this dude that was just like, he was like, listen, the more of us that act like this, the more overwhelming of a force we will be, and the less of us will die. Now, if we all kind of tiptoe into it, we might all die, versus like, hey, some of us are going to die. Let's reduce that number. Some guys were just like that. They just turned it on. There's something I remember learning in evolutionary biology, and it was called because fitness, capital F, is defined as, there's like 2 types. There's the number of progeny that you have that get that grow to reproductive age. So you can't just have 100 kids. You also have to be able to provide for them, shelter the wife, go get the food. That's like F1, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. And then like the even more kind of powerful number is the number of grandkids you have that make it to childbearing age. So it's like, if you have kids, successfully raise them, they have kids and successfully raise them, that is like, I don't remember what the equation is, but that's an indicator of your capital F fitness. And what they actually started to find was, in all sorts of animals, there was also like, they called it like the altruism gene, but there would be like, you could actually have a very high fitness level despite never having a kid, because maybe your brother has a kid, or you're in a little village and your 3 best friends have kids and you never have kids, but you're out there every day helping, going to kill the gazelle or the bear. You're bringing back the food. You're helping bring back the firewood. You're helping defend it from other people. And you indirectly aided the rising or the raising of these kids. Without you, they might have died. And so they called it like the altruism gene. So even though you weren't involved, there was something deep in their mind that was like, why am I? Because they couldn't explain it. Because normally it's like, well, why would a dad, jump in front of the kids? And it's like, well, it's biologically connected. It's their offspring. But then there are guys that's like, these weren't their kids, yet they were still there guarding the village, whatever. And there was something that was like this sort of like group mind that they knew that they could still enable the raising of these offspring. And so in a way it was they had that. And I don't know, maybe that's part of it. I don't know if it kind of plays into what you're saying, but I mean, it's kind of like a billionaire dying and giving 99% to some cancer charity. It's like there is some sort of like, yeah, what am I going to do with this money? What are my kids going to do versus how do you apply it to the greater? I mean, you really want to take it to a dark place, but you mean, right, you'd say like kamikazes in Japan, they're going down, our empire's falling, and we got to start taking drastic measures. Now, obviously, as an American, I don't like that idea, but you kind of get the same idea. Hey, I'm going to go plow my plane right into this fucking aircraft carrier, and I'm going to do more damage than 100 of you could do.
Right.
It's an odd thing. Yeah, just different parts of the brain developing. And I don't know.
Probably one of the most common examples that we talk about, in especially in military circles, is the guy, you have 10 guys near a foxhole, all of a sudden the enemy throws in a live grenade, and one guy will jump on the grenade, and he knows, I don't know if he realizes he's gonna die. He must know he's gonna die, but for some reason that sense of protecting his comrades overpowers his sense of self. He jumps on the grenade, takes the blast, everybody else lives, he dies. What's that all about? I mean, I don't see me. I see me saying, "You go first." Go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't see you doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know what instills that in somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, there is something though where it's like when you read accounts of that, people will say like, there was no premeditation. There was no like, okay, well, I'm the closest to the grenade. It's just this instant reflexive, you take it out. I don't know. I've had on Howard Bloom, who's a brilliant scientist, and one of his books called The Global Brain is all about how groups of any kind of animal, whether a bumblebee or human, and whether it's a group of 3 or a group of 3 billion, they all act in ways that when zoomed out behaves like a single organism. So like, you look at like a flower, you're like, oh, there's a flower, and you zoom in and there's like individual plant cells, and then you zoom in and there's proteins, and then you zoom in and there's atoms, and you see every atom and you're like, oh yeah, there's an atom and there's the proton and the electron. But you zoom out and it's a blossoming flower, or it's a caterpillar, or it's Tommy and Paul talking. But you zoom out all the way, yeah, and it doesn't behave like atoms. It behaves like Tommy in a leather chair, right? So
one organism. Yeah.
Yes. So that same thing happens to where if you zoom out in both space and time, so you zoom out and maybe look at like a satellite view of a city, and then instead of our normal lifetimes of, today is a day, you look at what happens in 3 years, the entire thing will act as like an amoeba, or it will do things where it will sacrifice part of it so the rest of it grows. And so what Howard's whole hypothesis is that we are unconsciously acting as parts of bigger brains, and although no one can individually explain it, it acts as not a single cell in my body is saying, let's do this podcast, yet here they all are acting in coordination to do this thing, and none of them are aware of it. So that's what he says, is whole groups, whole populations, whole countries, whole societies, they act in these ways that no one person is thinking about. Why did we do that? Why did we? Yet, it's all the birds flying in one perfect flock.
Like a communal self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to think maybe, but within it, none of them know it. So within us, we're seeing it at that sort of atomic level. And we're like, why did that guy jump on the grenade? But we're seeing that sort of inexplicable thing. But to the greater organism, it's like, well, yeah, I had 5 humans there and there was a grenade, and instead of losing all 5, I lost 1 and saved 4. But we don't see it as that. We see it as this weird, why did he do that? He's a hero. But, I don't know. It is odd. And then it really doesn't make any sense. Is he got you swimming with sharks? This whole thing of self-preservation. Yeah. And then you just got Paul. It's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go swim with these things.
Maybe I do have a death wish. I don't know.
It's like, what's the? Oh, is Paul extracting like a rare chemical from a shark? No, he just likes sharks. And well, actually, no, he doesn't even like sharks. He's terrified of them. And
Maybe there is some chemical inside me that, that's
Well, hey man,
by good sense.
hey man, I'm just as unhinged. I mean, I could have been a doctor, and instead I'm doing this thing. And it's like, where's the logic in this? Where's the altruism? I don't think that. And of course, you and I,
coming from.
yeah, but then you're crazy and I'm crazy, so we're not going to call out each other's craziness, right? It's the pot calling the kettle black. So you're like, you're like, I swam with sharks after I witnessed 9/11, and I'm like, my brother killed himself, so I started a podcast, and we're like, that makes sense. Everyone listening to this is like, these two guys are criminally insane. But
don't tell anybody.
Man. Yeah, man. Let's wrap this one up.
Okay.
And as always, would love to chat with you again. What's on the and as always, for everybody listening, Paul's books and your photography, I'll put it in the description as always.
Thank you.
And so what's next? You've tackled sharks, whales.
Well, as far as the thrills and spill stuff, I don't know yet. I have to kind of like see what I've been missing. But I'm just going to keep doing this as long as I physically can keep doing it. Because as you get older, you realize the string is getting shorter.
Oh yeah.
So as long as you keep yourself in good shape, you want to keep doing this stuff and not end up in a rocking chair someplace.
I do respect that you don't want to jump out of planes, because neither do I.
Yeah, that's I think I'm calling the halt to skydiving and parachuting and things like that. That's one risk I'm not going to take. That's to me that's senseless. But
snakes. You need to mess with snakes.
I won't. Yeah, I'll steer. Yeah, I think a lot of people have a primal fear of snakes. That's evolutionary. Me personally, yes, I will keep them.
No, I'm saying that's what you should do next.
No, I don't think so. No, give me a list and I'll check them off for you. I don't know. Email me a list of things and I'll get back to you. See what picks my interest. But
people who have watched this podcast this long if they've sat through this whole episode, comment. We'll see just how many people. I don't think anyone comments on any of these. Comment, and we'll see if Paul will do it. I think like an anaconda or like a water moccasin, that would be terrifying.
Well, when I see these pictures of some of these snakes in the Amazon, where the snake is like has this huge bulge in the middle of it, and they cut it open and find a person in there or something like that, that kind of like, okay, we'll file that away we'll throw something off the list.
But no, you can't use that logic because you swim with sharks.
That's true. Yes, you're right. Yeah, and then probably I can run faster than the snake can swim.
100%. That's not a lot.
I can outrun a snake, so I'll probably that makes sense.
That's not a legitimate answer, no, because you swim with sharks. That's what I said. Is like you've dealt with this most insane one, so you can kind of go. I would say that my uncle, my uncle did like security. He's from New England. He's a fish and game guy. I think he's in his 60s now. But a couple of years ago, real outdoorsman. But a couple of years ago, he took a job up in like inside the Arctic Circle in Alaska, and he was doing security for like not oil rigs offshore, but like onshore, like oil operations. He did like perimeter security for bears, and he kept like. He had like a shotgun. I think he had a Desert Eagle, like a 50 cal pistol, and he had a couple other things. And it was like he would, if he saw one and it was a threat, he'd shoot from a distance. And I think he always kept like like a double barrel or something. And he was like, if it ever ran at you, you'd shoot. He's like, because I have seen them run before when they open their mouth. But what I remember him explaining, and I'm just now thinking of this. This was years before I started the podcast, but he's kind of explaining what you're talking about. He's like, when they run at you, he's like, time slows down. Like I think he describes it as like a furry tractor. It's running at you. It opens its mouth, and there is this primal where you're like, that is like a beast that was like written about in the Bible.
Yes. Probably now that you mention it, I don't know if I could deal with the cold water, but seals is kind of appealing. I've seen a lot of situations where people have had great encounters with seals. Now, there are seals and there are seals. The ordinary fur seals that we see, they look kind of like warm and fuzzy in the water. Like see them nibbling at, people's fins, and they kind of kiss the divers. But you hear about encounters with leopard seals. It's a whole other animal. These things are pretty ferocious. They like to eat meat as well as fish. So I would probably draw the line at that. But now that you mentioned it, I wouldn't mind going, again, the cold water would be tough for me to handle, but something in Arctic, Antarctic with seals would be kind of like cool. I could see you getting something like that.
I think that Man, I think no, I'm just thinking bears. Snakes.
Yeah,
They're kind of, but there's something about snakes. The fact that they're not like overwhelmingly large. There's something about
yeah.
the bestiality of the shark, of the crocodile. There's something about it not just being primitive, but also just being large.
Yes, and in control. They're in control of their
Yeah,
environment.
they are
Whereas,
the apex predator.
and the bears can run faster than people can run. So I don't think I would
Yeah, and
I
they
would tackle a bear.
yeah. Well, that's exactly what I mean. Is like you've already stared death in the face, so you keep pulling out this rationale card. You've suspended rationality. I think grizzlies, an enormous. You go out there with a guide. You go out there with a guy, right?
Mhm.
Just like you do these other things. I think that's what you need. That
Okay.
snakes, and I was thinking like lions, but I feel like you can't really go mess with lions in the wild. They're
No,
probably mostly
no,
protected. And
no,
elephants seem more like whales, that they have kind of an intelligence.
they do. They do. Yeah, I mean, well, what I'll do is I'll have my wife update our insurance policy and have her give you a call, and you can make you can
I'll
give her
just
some suggestions.
see what voids your policy and what doesn't. Or man, I don't know. Maybe we just got to go hardcore. I don't know. Maybe we just throw you in like the Middle East or something, just straight up war zone. Maybe that's what eventually. Maybe that's where this leads, is you joining the military and becoming
That could
like
be interesting.
yeah. I don't know, man. There's got to be something in there. I'm just trying to think of, the one other thing that I think would be just truly horrifying would be getting in like one of those ultra deep submarines, like a bathysphere or the Trieste, going down to the Marianas.
Mary, oh yeah, I would love to do that. See that
So
appeals
you
to me.
like, wow, all right.
Yeah, I could do that. Okay.
See, that's not for me. No.
I mean, you know, claustrophobia I can kind of overcome. I have a little sense of, I don't like to be too confined, but I wouldn't call it claustrophobia, so I know I can handle that.
Yeah.
One of the things that scares people away from scuba diving is they feel claustrophobic with the mask around. You kind of limit your vision, and you
Sure.
feel heavy wearing this equipment and stuff like that. I never got that, so I could probably handle going down to the Marianas Trench and finding maybe megalodon. That would be
Fuck that. Fuck that.
very cool.
If you're gonna do that and die in the process, at least live stream it to me so I can get some views on the podcast.
I'll try and get you a tooth also.
Yeah. I'll be like, Paul died for this podcast.
There you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know what scares me more than anything we've talked about? I don't know. Bottom of the ocean kind of terrified. But you know what really gets me
What?
is being on the moon. There's something about that just scares. There's something about being all the way up there. And I know there's nothing there. I don't know what it is. There's something about the moon that is just terrifying to me. I love to look at it. But when I watch those videos of the astronauts kind of running around, I just think of like what happens when the cameras are off and you're just kind of back in the little ship and you just kind of, and it's just you and like one other friend on this entire basically planet. Something about that's unnerving to me.
What? I see. I kind of like that. That's something else I kind of like gravitate towards. Pardon the pun on gravity. But the one thing that terrifies me about that aspect of it is I saw. I forget if it was 2001: Space Odyssey or one of the Star Trek movies, whatever. Is being in that situation and then having your suit punctured by a little meteorite or something like that. Because I saw this movie one time where the guy's suit or his faceplate or something gets punctured, and you see inside all of a sudden he turns to like, agonizing death for a few seconds, frozen, and then becomes a skeleton that just turns to dust in a few seconds. Like, that kind of like in outer space environment that you're unprotected, it's not good for your body.
See that?
So that would terrify me.
That wouldn't bother. Like I'm less scared of drowning than I am being deep underwater, because it's like, okay, this is gonna really suck, but it's done and I'm over, right? But it's ultimately death, right? I think I'd be more scared of standing on top of a building than I would jumping off, because you're jumping off and it's death. It's, you got a couple seconds, whether you like it or not, whether you come to peace with it or not, it's just going to be over, right? I don't know. See, that doesn't like losing oxygen. I'd be like, yeah, all right, a couple of moments of terror, but there's something about just being up there. I don't know.
See, I don't think you wouldn't feel like you're up there. You'd feel like you're down. You're down here on the moon.
No. It's not a height thing. No, it's I know it would feel like this, and yeah, the Earth would look up there. No, it's not that. It's I don't know.
being
I,
away
I
in
just
that
just
environment.
just
Hostile environment.
you, just up there,
All by
and
yourself.
like,
Such a loneliness would kind of like get you crazy, right? Maybe.
but it's not even like loneliness on Earth. Your loneliness up, and then part of your mind would be like, I know there's nothing up here, but like, how sure am I? I'm like 99.999% sure.
What is on the dark side of the moon?
What I mean, what happens if you go on the dark side? No, I think about, because you know how like the LEM, what is it, the lunar something module?
Lunar excursion module,
Yeah, it really goes right and it shoots down, and you have the one that goes down to the moon, and you have the
yeah.
two guys on there, and then there's the one
Right,
that orbits.
right.
But the one that orbits does go on the dark side of the moon,
It
and you're
does.
out of radio contact for like 90 minutes,
Mhm.
and there's no light pollution, there's no nothing. Now, on one hand, you'll get the most beautiful view of stars that any human's ever seen before.
True.
But I always think like, what if you're on the back and you just, not even, I don't know, but you just see like an old relic, just something. Like Werner von Braun partnered with like Disney. I know I said we are gonna wrap this one up. I lied.
Okay.
Werner von Braun partnered with Disney, and if you remind me, I'll text it to you. But it was this whole video about, the exploration of space and kind of, getting the public hyped up for it. And it's,
Mhm.
pretty accurate, like, like prediction of what it would be. This is before Apollo. And it's you going on the moon, and it's orbiting around, and it's all this other stuff, and what we would have, and radio signals, and doing tests, and multiple stage rockets, all that good stuff. And it was all, it's the 1950s, like, we're in space now. But and it never gets addressed. But here's this guy who's the head of the Apollo program, who's the head Nazi rocket scientist, and in this thing that he directed,
Mhm.
they talk about like they go on the dark side of the moon, and one thing they were going to use is they had these like orbital, almost like flashes, like a flashbang, and they'd
Mhm.
shoot them down, and they were going to illuminate it and then take pictures of it. Kind of ingenious or whatever. So,
Okay.
but they're going to map the moon before we sent men there, which is eventually what we ended up doing. But you're watching this film, and it's like, they're shooting the flashes down, and they're just mapping the different areas. And then like one of the times they shoot like a map, they shoot a flash down there, and there's just this old, it almost looks like an old, like almost like Machu Picchu, not type, but it almost just looks like these, not even like a Great Pyramids where it's still in shape, but those really old relics where you can kind of just tell where the foundation of a house was or something. They're looking down, and they just see this whole kind of like structure. And it's clearly like completely defunct, broken down, but they see this thing that's very clearly uh, created by some intelligence, but it's been dead for a billion years. And like the music is like dun dun dun, and you see the two astronauts looking over, and then the rest of like the 30-minute just sort of program continues, and it never gets addressed that the head of the Apollo program was like, what happens when we find structures on the far side of the moon? And to me, there's something more terrifying about that, and I can't put a finger on it. I can explain why the shark is scary. I can explain why height is scary, right? But there's something about, I don't, just dark side of the moon, just you, and you just, I don't know, maybe light glints off the spaceship, and just for a second, you just, it looks like you're looking at like just these ruins. Like, do you even tell anyone, or do you just pick up the other astronauts and just take that to the grave?
I got a funny feeling that's what already happened, that they took it to the grave.
I've
I kind of wouldn't be I would not be surprised at all if they have seen things on the dark side of the moon and not reporting it for whatever reason.
the Brookings Institute, that think tank, which is up there kind of in institutionalized, I don't know, kind of established. It's up there with like the Rand Corporation.
Hmm.
The Brookings Institute put out their own like kind of internal paper in like 1967 or 68 when the Apollo program was well on their way, but we hadn't landed on the moon yet. And it was on the chance that we find life, or that we find remnants of some other civilization on the moon, what do we do? And it was, I believe, and I could be fake news, I think it was contracted by NASA, regardless of who it was contracted by. The Brookings Institute, this very established, respected institute or whatever, put out this thing, and they said, well, you would not tell the populace, because you wouldn't want it to kind of collapse the existing order because religion kind of kept society in touch, whatever. And it was also kind of implied that why would we want anyone else to know? Because what if there's some goodies up there? What if there's some technology we can reverse engineer?
Right.
How would you know? And it's who would be able to call your bluff and said you're up there all alone. What do you do when you actually you go find this thing? Who would you tell? Who would believe you? And does the government tell you to shut up?
That's the biggest fear, I think. And maybe you can wrap it up on this note that one of the fears that at a governmental level we have about finding out who somebody else might be out there is that from our own experience, every time a higher civilization encountered a lesser technologically advanced civilization, the lesser one got wiped out. That starts from Columbus right across, whatever. That's been our experience.
Yep.
So who's to say that wouldn't happen on an interstellar level?
Yeah. Every time a ship shows up on the shore, the women were about to get raped and the kids and the fighting age males were all about to be killed.
It reminds me of one, I think it was a Twilight Zone episode where they encountered another civilization, an alien civilization, wanted to be friends, and they were making a book up, and it was called, How to Serve Man. And everybody on Earth said, "Oh, this is wonderful. They want to learn how to serve us. This is, be our, work with us, fine." It was a cookbook.
Jesus. Sorry, I have a sore throat. I just took like a Cepasol drink and it's super.
Okay.
But no, you're right. That's what it would be. If they're showing up, when is the last time any group has ever showed up somewhere else with their best of intentions in mind?
Yeah, and even if they had good intentions, things kind of always evolve in a different way.
Yeah.
Maybe we say this for another show. I don't know. This is getting off on a tangent, which is kind of interesting, but
No, it's hold on. It's even if it is good intentions, right? Eventually it leads to what do they call them? The savages. That's what they call the Native Americans. Well, first you meet them and it's like, we need to democratize them, or, we need to teach them. And then it's like, oh, they don't really want a part of us. And it's like, all right, well then kill them. It very quickly goes dark every time, right?
It goes fast, very fast.
We go there with open arms and we're like, join our society. And they're like, no, thanks. And we're like, well, we really like this land. They're like, it's our land. It's like, you guys have bow and arrows. We have cannons. Get fucked. Exactly. Why wouldn't it be that? And it's also, I mean, who knows? Like, would you just keep it quiet? Because what if there is no technology to reverse engineer? Is there really anything to benefit other than wild instability?
I think that's the governmental fear, organizational fear that they think they know better and they can, people like us from panicking.
Well, why do you ban religion in a communist society? It's because you don't want any higher power than the state. So like one idea of like, if there are UFOs above the US, well, the government's primary concern is, can we get that technology and reverse engineer it, right? Everyone always wants the better technology. But let's say we can't. Well, the next best thing you want to do, you lose all credibility as big man on campus if you go, what happens if Russia or China tries to fly over the United States? We'll shoot them out of the sky. What about this saucer that has, just complete immunity, just does whatever it wants? Well, now all of a sudden you're not the big man on campus anymore. It makes you look like a bitch, right? It's your first day in prison. You knock out the biggest guy. What would you do if you're a UFO? You'd fly around the United States. So the best thing you can do is just not acknowledge it at all. And people will go, oh, I bet that's a private government project. Mm-hmm. There is a whole power aspect to it. So you find remnants on the moon. Maybe there's no technology. There's nothing they can get from it. What's the next thing you do? We don't want people thinking that there's something else, right? We are the big dogs. I'm the great white. You don't want the other sharks to know that the megalodon existed, right? Who knows, man? Who knows? I mean, to me, the weirdest thing would be like if you found remnants on the moon, but it was an alien. It was existence of a deep like a deep time old human civilization that maybe they underwent nuclear war and they
Right, right.
didn't survive, or the global warming or whatever.
Mhm.
But what if you found like the Great Pyramids on the far side of, or what if you found like the Sphinx, like a matching Sphinx,
Mhm.
and they got there, and it's like, oh man, like we have to have some humility. Like we've been this advanced before, and we still got wiped out. Yeah. Well, in the way that only Paul and I can do, we always start with, this is my friend Paul who swims with sharks.
We end
And
up
then
on
it just
Google.
goes. And now we're on Werner von Braun. I gotta edit the prior podcast and this one. And I gotta clean some shit around my apartment. Send me a text so I don't forget though about
Okay.
the Werner von Braun thing. I will send it to you because
I like to see.
it is worth it, because it's just odd. And you know, and I've had Charlie Duke on here 3 times, 10th man to walk on the moon. And I've never asked him about what's actually up there. And I don't want to. I don't know. Maybe,
How could you not?
I don't know. It's like a sign of respect, I guess. I just don't want to, because in all reality, if there's nothing up there, and he's probably like, oh, this dumb kid, he has me who's walked on the moon. And instead of asking me about walking on the moon, it's not good enough. You got to know about the aliens. I don't know. To me, it kind of feels like a smack in the face to him. And then if it was real, maybe he's like, please don't bring up the stuff on the moon. I don't want to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul,
Okay.
as always, it was a good one, my
Fun.
man. It's always it's always fucking fun. It's thank you again for your time. Thank you for coming on
My
here.
pleasure.
I'll put your website, your books, your photos, all that good stuff.
Appreciate
I'll
it.
put it in the
Thank you.
description. Everybody check it out. And if you are watching, please comment on what animal you think, what dance of death Paul should do next.
Yeah, I like to hear that.
Yeah. And
I'm getting bored. I'm looking for something to do.
I know, right? Fuck that shit. I'll stay right in here. I will live vicariously through you.
Okay.
Paul, as
Great.
always,
It's been fun.
pleasure. Thank you so much. Take
Take
care.
care.